Aston Villa under Unai Emery have been an absolute joy to follow here on the channel, and after their famous victory in the Champions League over Bayern Munich, it was kind of time that we had a look at Aston Villa to see how they were doing so far this season at home and on the continent. Were they still fighting on all fronts? Were they going to be a surprise package? It's probably not as much of a surprise at this point, but were they going to break back into those Champions League spots in the league? And what was the kind of aftermath of their transfer policy? And I couldn't really work out what conclusion to draw from everything we were looking at. Was this a bit of a purple patch this season, or was this the hallmark of champions, as people call it, you know, grinding out results and getting the points when you probably shouldn't? And the Aston Villa fans that tune into the content here on the channel showed up in the comment sections in their droves, telling me that this is not a purple patch and purple patches don't last 2 years and all the rest of it, which I totally agree with. And overall, Aston Villa have not been like fluky or lucky or anything like that to get the success that they've had for the last couple of seasons under Unai Emery. But certainly when you do look at, you know, the form and how they've got their points so far this season, it's not the same as it was last year. In the video today, we're going to be comparing and contrasting the strength of the Aston Villa squad last season to this, along with the form that we've seen this time last year. 7 games played as we find them now, 7 games played, so we can kind of further highlight what it is I'm kind of trying to wrestle with here. Like, is this a purple patch for Aston Villa? Will the wheels fall off over the next month or two? Or do they mean business? Are they about to kick on a gear and really challenge for some serious prizes over the Premier League and Europe and the Cups and everything else that they're going to be fighting for at any point in the video? If you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and get into the comment section, and again, feel free to tell me what I've got wrong or what you think I've got right, or anything else in between. And you know, what do you think of Villa? Are they going to continue to push the envelope and climb to those nosebleed positions in the Premier League? Are they going to get another European scalp or two under their belt, as they probably will progress to the next stage of the Champions League? And really, like, what does their season have in store for them? I'm always interested to catch your thoughts and feelings in the comment sections. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into it, because this is the sort of chat, this is the sort of content I love doing here on the channel. And you know, let's just get stuck right into it. We've got a wee bit of a recap from the last video in case you missed it, but where we're having a look at the form and looking at how, you know, the 2-1 victory against West Ham, the 2-1 victory against Leicester, it's both goal scorers, Onana and Duran. The 3-2 victory against Everton, the Wolves one, is 3-1, but it's, you know, 2 goals scored in like the 88th and the 92nd minute, whatever it was, drawn away to Ipswich. And now we've got the Man United game, because before the Man United game, all of these matches have been decided by the finest of margins. And yeah, you just need to get the win, and yeah, you just need to get the points on the board. But although we've hit 3 goals scored a few times across the season, Aston Villa just haven't been their same free-flowing goal-scoring selves so far this year from when I've watched them. And really, the drop points against Man United maybe helped some of you, I don't want to say sober up, but kind of come around to the kind of point of view that I've had. Because Man United nowadays are just a bona fide Stoke or Portsmouth or something like that. They spend way too much on players that probably shouldn't be signing for them. And, you know, the Man United are not Man United, you know. And watching that game, Onana was a huge miss. And I know, like, and again, this is part of the quandary with Aston Villa, because there is a lot of injuries going around their squad. They've not had really their best 11 available very much this season, if at all. But what they might be missing this year against Man United, I think it was a wee bit more apparent. It was a wee bit more to be seen. Like, the squad quality on paper looks absolutely fine. Tyrone Mings is coming back from injury now, and there's like a bunch of right backs, which is cool, you know, but this is generally the most common kind of players that have featured. We're getting wee Boobs, he'll be back from injury soon enough. I think McGinn will be back from his little period out, and Buendia's been back in and amongst the, you know, the picture again, which is long overdue. And on paper, like I say, zoomed out, like, there's really good quality. There's 2 to a position, you know, the tactics and you know the style of Aston Villa, but overall, for me, like, this squad just feels like a level below what it was last season. Now, after 7 games played, we currently find Aston Villa 5th in the table on 14 points with 12 goals scored. They've drawn twice and lost 1. Not that bad, I know. But last season, after getting beat 5-1 off of Newcastle, which really, like, at that point, I was like, oh, maybe it was actually maybe a wee bit of what happened to Brighton this year, but we'll get into that maybe at another point. They then followed that up with a 4-0 victory at Everton, a 3-1 victory at Burnley, 3-1 victory at Crystal Palace, a 1-0 win away to Chelsea, before smashing Brighton 6-1, and then drawing with Wolves 1 each before going into the same international break that we're currently in now. And yeah, there was that 6 goals scored against Brighton, but Aston Villa last year at the same point scored 18 goals across 9 different goal scorers. This year they've only scored 12 across 5 different goal scorers, and John Duran off the bench is joint top with Ollie Watkins on 4. This time last year Ollie Watkins was on 4, Douglas Luiz had picked up 3, and then a handful of players were scoring 1 or 2 goals themselves. John Duran, Leon Bailey, Matty Cash, Moussa Diaby, John McGinn, Paul Lopez. There was more and more players getting in on the action. And when you cast your mind back and when you think about, the amount of different goal scorers that Aston Villa did have in their squad at that point in time, even when there was still injuries and there was still stuff going against Aston Villa this time last year, and then you have a look at the level of the squad right now, there is still the bones of what is there. But for me, it becomes a bit more apparent in the Man United game, the Ipswich game. I don't know about Arsenal because that's just one of those top end opponents. You're not going to beat them every single time, but certainly Ipswich, I think Aston Villa would expect to beat. And again, looking at that Man United game off the back of beating Bayern Munich, you would have thought that Villa really should have took all 3 points on the day. And Morgan Rogers, who came in the January transfer window, he didn't come in the summer or wasn't really replacing anyone overly. He's maybe walked into that Zaniolo kind of space a little bit, but actually made it a first team component rather than a rotation option or a rotation for European football. All those statistics I've gave you, by the way, are for Premier League only. But outside of that, there's not been the same goal contribution coming from the midfield area or even those wide forwards to the same extent in the support of the goals that Watkins has been bringing to the table. And it really brought into light for me, Philogene was fantastic against Bayern Munich. It was okay against Man United as well. But I really do think that someone of the Moussa Diaby level, or even just Moussa Diaby himself, would have helped to win that game against Man United. I also think having someone of the calibre of Douglas Luiz still in the squad rather than a Ross Barkley, and I know it's you can't have 20 amazing players or whatever. I think Aston Villa could. I know the PSR stuff has kind of hamstrung them a little bit. Onana wasn't available, which is really the problem in the Man United game, is Barkley didn't really have that same engine, that same drive. And one of the hallmarks of Aston Villa this year that helps me be a little bit undecided whether this is a purple patch or whether they are going to really kick on and they have that hallmark of champions, is that they've had that consistent spine from the centre defence, centre midfield, Rodgers and Watkins through the attacking kind of part of the spine here. And then when Onana's taken out the equation against Man United, of course it's going to hurt the kind of build up and the dynamic of it. Barkley was okay without being good. I think, he could have done better in this game. I think we all know that. Because one of the things that really made Aston Villa's season what it was last year was their ability to consistently score 3 or more goals. It might have been they had to win 3-2, maybe it was 4-1, maybe it was 6-1 and all the rest of it. But because they were in such a regular vein of form of consistently scoring 3 goals or more, it meant even in those tighter games, they beat Man City and Arsenal 1-0 back-to-back, as well as beating Bayern Munich 1-0. These things aren't accidents, but to do that at the sharp end, that was around the festive period against the tippy-top opponents. You need to have, of course, your better players available, but you need to be at the peak of your powers, you need to be at the peak of your form, and that's one of the things that I'm really undecided about this squad. Now, without some of these clearly Champions League level players that are gone from the squad, do they still have that to the same degree as what they did last year? I'm a huge fan of Ramsey. I think Buendia coming back in will definitely help lift the load. John McGinn had some really interesting comments post-match, I think, at the weekend, saying that, Emery had a bit of a chat with him, telling him that he needs to up his game or he's out the door. Essentially, he's going to get bombed out the squad. And, if that's the sort of competitive environment that's there, they do have some of the characters, they do have some of the profiles of guys that can step up to replace the void of a Diaby and of a Douglas Luiz. And really, how much of a void do they leave is maybe something you're shouting at me in the comments section at the moment. But Unai Emery consistently makes changes from the bench. Unai Emery consistently adapts the starting 11 to the opponent that he plays and kind of somewhat tweaks the main strategy that they have, depending on the strengths and the weaknesses of the opposition. And, force majeure, the injury problems aside, Boob Camara will be back as well. I think we've mentioned that, as well as Mings. When these guys come back, yes, those options will certainly return, but will they have the same impact? Do they still, as a club, as a squad, do they still really pack that punch that they had before? Because I think against Man United, if they still had it and it was the hallmark of champions, as it were, grinding out those results, getting the 3 points when maybe you shouldn't have, or maybe when the opposition has just played really well and you have to lift your game to go and get the points there, especially after having a big midweek game and a famous result where there was maybe a bit of a come down, a bit of a hangover from. I think last year Aston Villa Villa would have won that game against Man United, and seeing them not win it, it just kind of brought what I was trying to say into focus a little bit better for me. And reading the comments coming in from you guys like, what are you talking about? Purple patches don't last this long. Like, number one, I'm not saying the whole time he's been there. I'm really just looking at the squad right now, because the transfer business, like, has it made them weaker or not? Because the squad was a lot busier last year as well, and with the injury pile up and with the injury problems that has arisen with some of the individual players in the squad, as well as the fixture pile up that happened last year, will happen this year, and will happen again if you're competing at this top end of the table. The squad was a bit more populated. There was more players in it, and you just had a bit more freedom to be able to rotate from weekend to midweeks. Never mind last year that the midweeks were like Europa Conference League, and for the first half of the group stage, you guys were just rotating and dialing the thing in until it got serious, and it's like, right, we need to go and qualify now, and started, you know, playing some different players and making sure that the results get put over the line. Whereas Champions League, you're not going to get that luxury, because this ranks right next to drawing with Ipswich for me. Like I've already mentioned, Man United are just a puffed up mid-table team at this stage. A 0-0 draw at home. You can see here from the statistical ratings out of 100 that not many players were completing much successful actions throughout the game at all. But Aston Villa had 54% of possession, quite an even game, but Aston Villa edge out on the possession statistics. 11 shots, only 1 on target. Now, Onana is riding high in the clean sheet standings these days, but this Man United defence had Harry Maguire, who got forced off at half-time, Johnny Evans, Delict and Lindelof come in at half-time. And when you see how ineffective their strikers were, Højlund, Xerxes, Rashford, Anthony, Mazraoui as well, probably for me one of their better players, not only on the day, but this season so far, off injured at half-time. Like, this was 3 points there for the taking, and this was massive points dropped for me. And like I say, I like Philogene. I think he's a really good player from what I've seen. He was brilliant against Bayern, but I think if you just swap him out for Diaby in this game, Villa win it 2-0. And I guess this kind of takes me back to, if this is Aston Villa like going up the levels and really evolving to be a bona fide top end Premier League club, you know they're going to bring in reinforcements in the January window. And really, where do they need those reinforcements? Is it as cold cut and clear to see as like kind of what I'm talking about? Like just a straight out Diaby replacement. Diaby, clearly a Champions League level player, France international and all the rest of it. Huge loss. Is it just another attacking talent to come into the roster here? Duran's just signed a new contract, so you know he and Watkins are bought in. You've got those two strikers, which is brilliant. And between some of the youth players that they've been horse trading around in the summer, there's probably striker number 3 somewhere in their ranks if there was an injury crisis or yellow card suspension and an injury kind of bumped off each other and all the rest of it. But will McGinn still bring those goals from midfield? Can Buendia be effective at this end of the competition? You know, Champions League, Premier League, top 4, top 3 positions. Barkley does seem to be, like, he looked great last year at Luton, and I'm sure he'll do well for Aston Villa again, but when the pressure was on his shoulders, when the responsibility was his to carry, I don't know if he quite had it against Man United. Bailey's always been a little bit flaky at Aston Villa, going through hot and cold patches and having some fans really believe in him, some fans not as sold on him. We all love Ramsey, of course, but the injuries always keep coming around. Rodgers is an out-and-out success, and I think he's going to be one of the best players in the league this year. Will Philogene continue to develop this year? Will he start to carry that load that we're talking about, that Moussa Diaby is maybe vacated? I don't really think defensively there's much to worry about, you know. I think other than the centre-back numbers, which Mings coming back will probably help a lot with, because Diego Carlos isn't always nailed on. We see a lot of Konsa playing in the middle with maybe like a Bogard in this position, or a Costa, or a Cash who played against Man United. And it's not really the defence I'm worried about, and like I've mentioned a few times already in this, the main thing for me when I'm watching Premier League football and judging what teams are actually delivering and who will actually go the difference and deliver on their promise, on their potential, on their fans' ambition, is the amount of goals that they've got in their squad, how many goals they're able to score. And seeing a year-on-year decline of Aston Villa from 18 goals in the first 7 games to 12, 9 different goal scorers down to 5, I just worry that they've got less and less options to go and win these matches that they need to, and the Aston Villa fans, especially the ones that jump into my comment section, so dearly want them to go out and get. And I'd love to see them do it. I want this to be something where it's like, oh wow, Aston Villa did kick on and they went and done such amazing things throughout the 24-25 season. Don't get me wrong, but I can't help but call it how I see it when I'm looking at it. I'm really undecided whether they're starting to maybe crumble and they're really got a lot of pressure on, quite a delicately balanced squad, which does have injuries and some problems around it, or Do they have that bit between the teeth? Are they showing that champion level credentials where they're still grinding out results when maybe they shouldn't? And when some of these injuries come back in, and when maybe some of these guys get back into the form that they did show last year, we're going to be like, wow, look at Aston Villa in 4th, 3rd, 2nd, wherever they might end up. Because that's just going to be exciting. And if that is the case, Aston Villa will be scoring goals, they'll be taking points off of teams, and it's just going to be a party. It's going to be good fun, which is what we're all about here on the channel, following football in the most enjoyable way possible. So again, guys, I'm really looking forward to catching what your thoughts and feelings are in the comment section of this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this on screen, and now some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one.